Warm welcome to the grandfather of parenthood that passed away. That just broke my heart. So, Craig, come and share, brother.
Thank you. Well, they killed me off, is what they did. Hi, I'm Craig T. Nelson, and it's an honor and a privilege to be here today. I am a grandfather, and a great-grandfather. I have 9 great-grandkids and one on the way, and then I have 8 grandchildren and 3 kids, one of whom is here today, Noah. He's my youngest son. You'll have to kind of forgive me a little bit. I'm going to start crying, so. My kind of guy. Well, you can't talk about God and the Holy Spirit and be truthful and be honest without feeling such an overwhelming sense of gratitude and blessing. And I just pray that the words of my mouth and the thoughts of my heart be pleasing to you. In the name of Jesus Christ. So I was, as a kid, I was in love with God. I enjoyed Him. It was rapturous. And I feel that it was extraordinarily blessed in that regard. My parents weren't necessarily religious, but I was introduced to God in a way that I really can't explain, but I just knew of His existence, and I reveled in the joy and the anticipation as a child of that awareness. I felt extremely covered and blessed. Somewhere along the line, that got covered, it got distressed, it got abused, it got I don't want to say destroyed because it never left, but it was certainly diminished. And in later years, I became a drug addict and alcoholic, not as a result of that, but as a result of my own choices in my life. I am now 39 years sober. I'll be 40 in January 21st, God willing. But I tell you that so that you realize that you're speaking to or that you're listening to somebody that has a history with an area of life that I should have never gotten into, but who did. And so if anybody here is hurting or in that position right now, I hopefully can speak to you through my experience, strength, and hope that God has given me, because the purpose of what I have found in my walk with God, and especially being an alcoholic and a drug addict recovering, is that the maintenance of my spiritual condition is the only reason that I'm sober. In other words, when I got sober, I was obsessed physically or mentally, and I was I was addicted bodily, and spiritually I was very, very sick. And what I found in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, because that's where my recovery group is the beauty of being made aware of where God is so powerful and so present and so loving that I've seen transformations, not only in my own life, but in so many others. And guys I sponsor, I'm speaking to them about the God that they know exists in their heart, but right now they've rejected. And the beauty of transformation and the witness to see a man like myself who was lost and destroyed, obsessed and compulsively limited, to then be able to be absorbed and loved and understood by other men in the program, but then to realize the power and the beauty and love of God. Anything is possible. Anything. So I'm going to speak to you about something very personal. It's I don't think many people know about it in terms of, I don't make this public, but it was an experience I've had that is true. And I'm not an experiential Christian. I mean, in other words, I've had a lot of mountaintop experiences, but I'm not necessarily dependent on that. It's been beautiful, it's been wondrous, but most of my experience has been as a father, grandfather, and great-grandfather in the valley. And the valley is where it's just practical Christianity. It's practical living, everyday problems with God on your side, and learning how to walk as much as I can in the Spirit. I wasn't always that way. And in 1973, I was working as a writer and performer, but mainly a comedy writer for a lot of different people. Alan King, John Biner, Tim Conway. And I was making a living and I was doing okay, but I was pretty much an addict. And so somewhere in the period of time, a decision was made in the family. I had a wife at that time and two children, Christopher and Tiffany. Tiffany's my oldest daughter. We decided to move up into Northern California, get away from Hollywood, and just get off the grid. You know, it's kind of like there was a TV show called The Waltons at the time, and so we were going to become the Waltons and grow our own food and live naturally. Well, I'd never done anything like that in my entire life, so I didn't. So up we went and got up to 299 near Redding, Highway 299, and it goes east and west, and flipped a coin, went east, and found a little town called Round Mountain. And so I bought 40 acres. My mom had died and left me some money, and bought 40 acres up there in the mountains. And it had no running water and no electricity. And I'd never built anything in my entire life. I didn't know what it was. But I had a book called How to Build Your Own Log Cabin. And unfortunately, the middle of the book many of the pages got stuck together in a rainstorm, and so it was not accessible, which rendered itself very visibly in the house that I built. But I decided to build a chicken coop first, so I did that because I thought that would be a good experiment. And what the heck if the roof falls in on chickens, you know. So I built a chicken coop, and then I was living in an 8 by 36-foot trailer up there in the mountains and having to find water and learning how to live primitively. And then what to do for electricity, and they didn't have generators, they had none of that. This is in 73, 74. So anyway, I eventually was able to build a semblance of a house. It was really a work of art, I would say. Not a great one, but it was livable. And part of it was built with a stolen horse that I procured from a guy that was a gypsy horseshoer, farrier. And that horse had never drawn anything other than maybe circles in the ground. Because when I put traces on him to drag the logs up, it was like, see you later, and he left. And so I drug him up with my Volkswagen van. Anyway, the house was built. But I raised at that time, 2 kids. And one of them, Christopher, we had a bond that was so close. I was a logger, surveyor, janitor, plumber. I did anything I could to make a living. And Chris, he'd go with me. And I had a truck called Rosemary. It was a 55 Chevy that barely ran, but boy, that Rosemary, she was something, bald tires and all. I mean, I couldn't afford, split rims. Have you ever tried to change a split rim in the mountains with nobody helping? You can get killed. Those things, well, anyway. So I put him on my lap, we drive to work, and I put him, I made shakes and shingles for a while. I split some cedar. I mean, I learned so much in the mountains, but Chris was sit on my lap. And he wore coveralls that looked like an engineer's coveralls and an engineer's hat. So there we were. And he got to be about, I guess it was around, he was 8 or 9. And we had a bond that was like inseparable. He was Mr. Dirt. That was his nickname. He was always in my toolbox, playing with my tools. He idolized me, and I loved him. And I loved my daughter. And Noah was born there, up in the mountains. Well, gradually, I had no money. I was on food stamps and welfare. I had made a living in Hollywood at one time. The only place to come back to was Hollywood, to make a living, to keep the property, whatever. But my wife and I were having problems, and so eventually we divorced. And I left. I hitchhiked back to LA, and I became embroiled in drugs and alcohol. And as a result, I did and was able to make a living and became a sort of celebrity then. I did my first movie, and Justice for All, and next thing you knew, things took off. And I had lost a family. It was really, really rough because I didn't think I'd ever get them back. So over a period of time, they moved to Hawaii. Noah was raised in Hawaii. There were various other places they moved to, and Chris was very distant. He blamed me for a lot of things. And it really hurt. But I was doing my own thing, And I didn't know God, really. I was running from God. But anyway, they moved to Hawaii, and in 1984, January 21st, I got sober. And part of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is to make amends. So over a period of time, I got to a point of clarity. I was beginning to understand the relationship that the higher power has in getting sober. I did not. Can I borrow a napkin? Because now I'm going to start dribbling. Thank you. Excuse me. So I went to Hawaii to make my amends, and it was a total disaster. Chris, he was hurt. He was hurt. And I knew there was nothing I could say, that the only thing I could do was be an example. And if I wasn't sober, if I didn't do the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, none of this was going to rectify itself or have any hope of change. But there was so much animosity, as you can imagine. I mean, we were very close at one time, and then all of a sudden, now I'm with the woman that's going to eventually become my wife, and, they're living with their mother. My kids are living with their mother, and there's some animosity for sure there. So there's a lot of stuff that needs wreckage of the past that needs to be cleaned up. So Chris came to see me at the hotel I was staying at. He was 16 or 17 at the time. And I was really excited to see him, It was like, and he came in, and it was rather stern and abrupt and blah, blah, blah. And it was hard. But the one thing he wanted to do was wrestle. So we wrestled. And this kid is strong. And he put me down. And put me in a headlock. And I went nuts. I mean, I got out of it, but it was ugly. And he got up, and he looked at me, and he had tears, and he stormed out. And, family called me. What'd you do? You did it again. You haven't changed. It was the last thing I wanted. There it was. So anyway, kept getting sober, kept it up, kept trying to make contact, told him I loved him, did the thing, and gradually he would come over and visit. It was very, it was hard for him. He didn't appreciate who this woman was in my life anymore. I tried not to condescend in any way. Just tried to do what I did as much as I knew of God in my life. I just prayed. Please, Lord. Okay, so we started growing up, and I say that in this regard. I'd go up to visit him. He's in Puyallup, and he's working in construction, and I go to see him, and it was formal. Hey, he'd be like, hey, how you doing? Well, doing okay. And we'd go in his truck, and he was going to get married, and we'd sit in the truck, and he'd tell me about his grandfather and how much his grandfather meant to him, and how important his grandfather had been in his life, and how much he looked up to his grandfather. And I remember sitting in the passenger seat thinking, I wish he'd talk to me that way. So it was like that, and he got married, and it was okay, It's okay. I was there, present, doing the program, sticking with it. All of a sudden, in my life, the presence of God started making himself really there. And I got connected, and I realized that I was not going to solve this problem. That my child was his child, and that I had to turn him over to the care of God, as I understood him. And I understood then what he had done for me, and that if possible, he would do it in our lives. But if not, he was under God's protection. If I'm still sober, the umbrella's strong, the umbrella's there. I'm taking care of myself. I've got a seat in AA, and by God, I'm going to put my butt in it. And I'm going to listen, but I got to stay there. That's the first thing. The other thing is, Father, now, it isn't a one-time deal. I got to do it continually. So it ends up, I'm in New York, I'm at Lincoln Center, and I'm doing a play. The reason I went back and did it was because that's where I got sober in 1984, because I'd blacked out doing a play in the second act. And that was really my pitiful and incomprehensible tomorrow. So I was going back to pay homage to my God and myself. And I've got my Bible, and I've got me in an apartment, and I'm speaking long distance to, well, Chris has, as I said, gotten married, and he's going to have a baby. They're going to have a baby. And we have the conversations are very, very tight. And I'm praying. And here's the deal. I have an issue while I'm there with something in my life that needs taken care of. It was very serious character defect that needed working on. So I got my Bible, and I was then going to the vineyard in Malibu. But, you know, when I'm in New York, I was going to the Times Square church. David Wilkerson, crossing the switchblade, I don't know. So I'm going to that church, and, you know, it's pretty much gospel, full-on, great, really great services. And so I'm working on this issue, and it's really, it's one of those things that I know I can't do it by myself. I need help, right? So I'm praying about it. So I finally decide that it's become untenable. So I pick up my Bible, and I go to Central Park. I wasn't that far away. And I find a rock, and I sit on the rock, and I'm out there, and I said, God, if you need me to be of use to you, give me strength and a hope and assurance that I can do this, because I need help. Okay. Nothing magical happened at all. I just sat in a rock and had the Bible. Well, you could open the Bible. Okay, I'll open the Bible. So I opened the Bible. And it's so great. And I'm going through my... Yeah. I get to Psalm 19. And it's like, how can I know all the sins lurking in my heart? Keep me from deliberate sins. Do not let them control me. For then I'll be free from guilt and innocent of great shame, and may the words of my mouth and the thoughts of my heart be pleasing to you. Amen. It was an answer to what I didn't know. I think it's around the middle of Psalm 19. So I come back, and I go to work, and we're doing the show. And late one night, it's about 11 o'clock, my time, I get a call on the phone. And it's Chris. And he says, hey, Dad, I'm laying here in bed with my baby son on my chest. And I've just told him I love him. And I want you to know how much I know you love me. I love you, Dad. As a father, the only thing I've ever wanted was to go back and be a son who had my ear on my father's chest, and I was sitting on his lap, and he had his arms around me. And he said, I love you. And I can hear the reverberation in my ear. And he's speaking to my heart because he's speaking from his heart. And I think that's who we really are. I know that's who I am. That Chris and I now have incredible relationship. And I'll finish with this. His wife left him and went to be with another man. And Chris called me and said, can I come down? I said, sure, come on down. Well, we prayed on my back, in the patio in the backyard. We cried. He cried. He was devastated. He was broken. Everything, the rejection, again, of feeling rejected. I mean, he loved this and does love this woman. Dad, how come? Why? The kids. He had 2 kids at the time. It was horrible. Well, it got so bad that I got a call one afternoon. He was back in Seattle, and he had gone into his bedroom, and someone said he had a gun. And there were pills in there that his wife had had. And so I called a pastor I knew, and I had 3 people to call, AA, Suicide Hotline, and this pastor. And so I called Roger Archer from the Foursquare Church up in Seattle, or Puyallup, and Graham. And he was on his way to Seattle. He said, I'm supposed to speak in Seattle. I'll turn around and go back. He turned around the freeway, went back, got to the house, got in, got Chris out of the bedroom, and really saved his life. He was so despondent. He was in a very black, dark place. Well, 2 days later, I get a call from Chris. He's going to go to work. This is a completely different person. There's a light in his voice. It was palpable. I mean, it was organic. You could feel it over the phone. And he said, it's okay, Dad. I'm great. And I'm thinking, oh man, he's in such denial. No, Dad, it's okay. I'm really okay. He says, I love you. It's going to be fine, Dad. God's going to take care of it. And I said, how? What? He said, I met him this morning. He got up at 5 o'clock in the morning. He was in tears. He got at the kitchen table, got into Romans 8. God came and cleaned it. It was gone. I mean, it was like, you know what he did? He forgave her. How silly. He forgave her. And he took her back. They're together now. Isn't that great? Anything's possible. It is so, and such, it's so magnificent. And there's such extraordinary things that we're capable of, we don't even know. My children, my daughter Tiffany, believer, just had a double mastectomy, healing, trying, in pain, talking about God, sending me, Oswald Chambers stuff. I'm with God, sending me songs. Noah just got back from Burma after spending 2 months with the Free Burma Rangers. Watching the genocide happen, getting shot at. That's my kid. Christian. I am so blessed. So blessed. Thank you for having me, and I apologize for dribbling. It's just what I do now. I'll cry at commercials. It's really sad, Thanks.
Well, we're going to do some worship, but Craig, I want to thank you for being transparent and open. May the Nelson family flourish. Because, guys, this is what's needed, this modeling, this openness, and even where there's pain and trauma. And nothing. We heard the story of not the prodigal son, but the prodigal father. And look what God did. Obedience and following through, as hard as it is, and extending forgiveness is a power that is unmatched anywhere. Mark's going to lead us in some worship, so let's stand.